Hello and welcome to the Feeling Good podcast. I am your host, Fabrice Nye, and joining me here in the Murrieta studios is Dr. David Burns. Hi, David.
Hi, Fabrice.
Dr. David Burns has been a pioneer in the development of cognitive therapy, and he is the creator of the new team therapy. He is the author of Feeling Good, which has sold over 5 million copies in the United States and has been translated into over 20 languages. He is an emeritus adjunct clinical professor of psychiatry at the Stanford University School of Medicine. This is episode 30 of the Feeling Good podcast, and this is our second installment in the series of doing a live session with a client, our client Mark. Last time you heard the testing part, and now we're moving into the empathy phase, and there was a little bit of a transition to go from the testing to the empathy, but I think one really blends into the other. And we may want our listener to pay attention to certain things that you and Jill did during the empathy phase. You want to say something about what they should pay attention to?
Yeah, during the empathy phase, there are certain things we are doing and certain things we're explicitly not doing.
Yeah.
And the things that we are doing, I think of empathy as having three components.
Yes.
Thought empathy is, if the patient would say if it's my patient, say, yeah, David really understood how I was thinking, and he got it absolutely right. That would be perfect thought empathy.
Yeah.
Feeling empathy, the patient would say, David absolutely understood how I was feeling. He got all of my feelings, and he got an A+ on that also.
Yeah.
But the third part would be warmth and compassion and acceptance. While you're summarizing how the patient is thinking and feeling, you have to convey a sense of kindness, a sense of liking.
Right.
And you need those three pieces to do superb empathy.
Right, and of course that is present in this segment.
Oh well, yeah, and that's one of the reasons I love working with Jill, because she just has beautiful empathic skills. Whenever I'm doing co-therapy with her, I know we're going to have a winner. The things not to do during the empathy phase, and I can say this, and therapists think they understand what I'm saying, but they most don't, is to resist the urge to rescue the patient.
Yeah. There's a point like this where Jill really makes a point in saying, I'm not trying to rescue you. Yeah,
yeah, right. And don't do anything to help the patient.
Yeah.
Don't try to solve problems for the patient. Don't give advice. When you're doing empathy, you want to go with the patient to the gates of hell, and simply be there with the patient to witness what the patient is thinking and feeling, and resist trying to be a therapist or trying to do anything helpful. Just being there. Now later in the session, we have a lot of tremendous tools to help the patient if the patient wants help.
Yeah.
But at the pure empathy phase of the session, it's just understand what's going on from the patient's point of view and in the patient's heart. And then also one other comment I'll make is, and this may sound bizarre, but while Mark is talking about his problem with his son and how he feels like a failure as a dad, and I think that there's something about him that's defective, I say, stop, would you write that down?
Yes.
And I'm using the daily mood log,
yes.
which is a tremendous tool.
We'll put that on the show notes so people know what we're talking about.
Yeah. And later on, we'll use the daily mood log as a methods tool to change the way he's thinking and feeling. But in the empathy phase, you can use the daily mood log to help you do superb empathy, simply to gather precise, accurate information on exactly how the patient is thinking and feeling.
Yeah, that's really useful. Great. Well, let's see what this is.
Yeah, we just found out for all the
I don't know if we'll put that in the recording.
We can leave it in the recording. We have this beautiful new kitty, and she just knocked a platter over that smashed on the floor, and our floor is covered with dirt right now.
Oh well.
Don't edit it out. We're sitting here in my living room recording this. You call this Murrieta Studios, but it's just my living room. Okay, back to the session.
Back to the session. Let's see what Jill had to say about it. So Jill, tell me a little bit about the part when you and David did the empathy phase. This is actually a part that took quite a while in the session. And one other thing I wanted to mention is that the entire session, if you put it end to end, is about 2.5 hours, which is quite a bit longer than most people are used to for a therapy session. So tell me a little bit about the empathy phase and the necessity for the time you're spending with this.
Yeah. I mean, I think part of the model, a really important part of the model is empathy. We're actually following a bit of a format there. We're trying to use what we call thought and feeling empathy to reflect back to Mark what we're hearing in words and also in feeling. And we're really trying to see the truth in what Mark is struggling with, what we call disarming. We're using stroking, which means that we're offering Mark authentic kind of warm comments around respecting and admiring him. This, again, is not to be confused with BSing. I'm not just trying to make Mark think that I like him, but really finding ways to connect with Mark and to express kind of warmth and caring toward Mark, and really just asking questions to allow him, this is what we call inquiry, to allow him to share more and tell more. And yeah, absolutely. I think this part of therapy is very important. It's not about just meeting with a patient and, again, throwing methods at them, but taking time to understand what the patient is experiencing, what they want help with.
Yeah, you do ask a lot of questions. You do extract a lot of you flesh out the story when you talk to Mark. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
And excuse me. I noticed that it was David at the end of the session who was kind of like checking in with Mark, see like how are you doing? What is that part of the empathy phase?
Right. So, yeah, oftentimes after we've spent a good deal of time empathizing, connecting, listening, understanding, encouraging more expression, we do check in with our patients to ask them, how are they feeling? Do they feel like they're heard? There's also a bit of a question. I don't think we exactly say it this way in the session with Mark, but there's a bridge from empathy to what we call agenda setting that we usually say to our patients, which is what we call the invitation.
Yes.
So that's kind of where we say, in this case, I would say something like, Mark, you've shared with us a lot now about your feelings of sadness and guilt and difficulty in your relationship with your son. And I'm wondering, would now be a good time for us to kind of get to work and to help you with that problem? Or do you feel like you need some more time to talk and to get some support? And that's what we call the invitation step.
So
because
that's the cutover. Yes.
It's that bridge. It's giving the patient permission to either continue with empathy if needed, or to kind of make it clear to the patient that there is this other option that we'd love to do as well, which would mean getting to work. Yeah, so Mark, will you tell us a little bit about what it is you're looking for help with?
Yes. I just want to say that I'm grateful for this opportunity. It is a decades-long issue in my mind, and I have had decades to to try to analyze it myself and try to help myself. And still, it's there. Yes, I live with it. I'm not depressed about it. I'm not horribly anxious about it. But it is there. It's in the back of my mind every day, part of my routine, normal life. And I know that it probably could be better. There's something that I'm missing here. Probably shouldn't take it all so personal.
So will you tell us a little bit, Mark? Tell us a little bit more. You kind of teased us in a little way there by sharing with us that there is this thing that's been hanging over your head in the back of your mind that you think of every day that isn't debilitating but still feels like a huge weight, it sounds like. Can you tell us a little more about what it is that you're suffering?
Well, I guess I'm trying to get away from it. Are you avoiding
getting to the point here?
I'm sorry, yeah. When I was much younger, I was a kid, I had two main goals in my life. I wanted to have a big, connected, loving family, everybody's close to each other and probably even live in the same city or in the same neighborhood or something. And my second biggest goal in life was to become a doctor and, be a good physician. It seems to me that I have been adequately successful in becoming a doctor, but I would say I've probably miserably failed in helping to raise a family. I used to take more personal responsibility for that failure. Now I know that it's not all in my hands, but still my part in it is heavy guilt on my conscience.
Okay, so you're saying that you kind of as a kid, when you thought about the future, you thought about having these two really important goals to you, and one was to become a physician and do a great job at being a physician. The other one was to have this big, close, connected, loving family.
Right.
And you feel like you've done a great job of being a successful physician, or you said it more humbly than I just did, but you feel that you haven't, that you've really failed in this other goal of helping to raise a close and connected family.
Right.
And was there a little emotion there when you were talking about, that this is heavy on my conscience and feeling some sadness and regret?
Yeah. Part of it is feeling guilty, feeling the thought of I've been a failure in this regard, little anxiety. There's a little anger at circumstances that led to this point. I often have to have the list of feeling words in front of me.
Well, we can help you out with that right now. Just for the listeners, we're pulling out a daily mood log, which can be useful at all aspects of the session. We're still in the empathy phase, but it doesn't hurt to record some of the feelings, the situation, the negative thoughts, even in the empathy phase. And the first thing on the daily mood log, it says upsetting event, and you could just put something like thinking about my role, as a father, however you would want to put it.
I put my role as a father for my son.
Yeah, yes, right. And then you already gave us a negative thought. Mm-hmm. And what I'm doing now could be controversial because I'm interrupting the flow of the empathy. And yet we will easily get back to that, but you've given us things already that are so extremely valuable, and we want to capture the fish in a net, so to speak. And you just gave us a negative thought. I've been a failure. Would you write that down here as negative thought number one? I'll shut up and turn it back over to you, Jill, in just a second. But how strongly did you believe that? Do you believe that when that goes through your mind?
Probably 70%.
70. And then you said a couple of emotions here. there's an emotions table. Here's a category: guilty, remorseful, bad, ashamed. Do any of those resonate?
Yeah, both guilty, remorseful, and ashamed.
And then how powerful is that between 0 and 100?
I would say 60.
60. And then you mentioned angry. Here's an anger cluster. Circle any of those words.
Yeah, I would say resentful and upset, and I would put that at somewhere like probably maybe 30.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I was just going to ask if, Mark, I'm wondering if it's hard for you to talk a little bit about kind of the details, because you've given us like a very teeny snapshot, and we're starting to get a sense of your thoughts and your feelings. But I wonder, would you be willing to share with us, more about what's led you to, what are you feeling guilty about? What are you feeling remorseful about, ashamed about, resentful about?
Well, just to share with you that these decades of raising my son has not been smooth because of outside circumstances. Have been pretty tumultuous. All along, I have felt like a cat that takes the kids by the in her teeth by the neck and takes them from unsafe places to safe places and another safe place and another safe place. So that's been my life with my son, always to be there and protect him and keep him from harm. But in the process, for now a long time, maybe since he became a teenager, we have not had any meaningful relationship. Now, one may say, so what? Just assume that your son has grown up and gone and probably is in another continent, and what's the big deal? But as I shared with you, one of my principal goals in life from childhood was to have a big connected family, and that hasn't happened, and I'm both sad about it, and I'm also feel guilty about it.
Yeah. And also, I just wondered, I don't even know how old your son is.
He's 40.
He's 40.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that helps. And so, are you saying you feel like on some level you've taken care of him, you've kept him safe? And are you saying that you guys have, I wasn't sure if that was a metaphor or what you meant to say, that you have had to move around a lot and that you've been in dangerous situations?
Yes, it's real. Yes, I have basically took him and the whole family, myself, my son, from the jaws of devastation into a safer place, and then move again, and establishing in a new place takes a lot of efforts to do. Right. I've gladly, happily done that. Was considered it part of my goal in life, my responsibility in life. During all of these tumults, I think mainly I did not have the mental skills to be able to develop a human relationship, so to speak, with my son. Or part of it could have been circumstances. But I think I have a much deeper belief in something defective in my mind, emotion, brain that has resulted in a loss of relationship with my son.
Wow. So it sounds like that might be a good other thought to write down while you're saying it, that there's something defective in my brain.
Yes.
That has led me to, I didn't get the full sentence, but something like a bad relationship with my son.
Not to be able to have a good relationship with my son.
Yeah, so there's something
defective in my brain that has prevented a loving relationship with my son.
Correct.
And want to just expand on one or two brief things here. Then when you say that, how believable is that?
I think it's 90.
90. And then you mentioned you feel sad. Would you circle the words in this sad cluster?
I would say sad and unhappy, and that's considering just this relationship. My level of sadness is even after so many years is pretty high. I would put it at 60.
And then I probably wouldn't want to go into it in a whole lot of detail, but you mentioned, moving the family like a mother cat takes the baby kittens by the neck and moves them to safety. And do you want to mention, anything about the jaws of devastation that you've escaped from? I know from knowing you personally that was pretty horrific and dramatic circumstances. But do you want to just say, generally what that was?
Sure. At the time that he was a young child, where we lived turned upside down, and this is on the other side of the world, and people just being killed, devastated, bombed, right and left, and I managed to pull us out of that place and bring everybody first to the safety of a bigger city in the same country, and from there to the safety of this country. And it was a project. It was not an easy
and you mentioned one night there was a kind of revolution in your country.
Correct.
And you had a call at the hospital.
Correct.
And were stopped by some young revolutionary kids with weapons,
guns. Yes.
And you were shot 5 times in the legs
Correct.
and feet.
Correct. Yes.
So it's not, and they threatened to kill you.
Right.
So the traumas that you've been through, and bringing your family to the now beautiful circumstances that they all enjoy here was not a trivial journey. Is your son here in the U.S.?
Yes, he is.
Yeah.
Yes. Safe.
Yeah, good.
Wow. But it sounds like what you've shared with... I'm glad you shared those details. I wasn't aware of any of that. I kind of have the chills as I'm picturing you having to go through all of what you went through. And
I think they forced you to keep standing up after they shot you in the legs,
yes.
right?
Yes, because I knew that if I moved, they would kill me for sure. So even after being shot, I didn't even move an eyelash.
Wow. And you're saying that although you were able to kind of keep your child safe during all of this, at the same time, you weren't able to forge a close or connected emotional relationship with him.
So logically, I deduced that there must be a brain defect keeping me from doing that.
So there's something, you're convinced and you're suffering because you're convinced that there's something wrong with you, that you're defective.
Correct.
In some way.
And you laugh, which is nice. You have a great laugh and a great personality and a great warmth. But are there times, when you're alone and feeling pretty dark about it?
Yes.
About that.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
Oh, I wish it wasn't that. I wish we were close. We talked 10 times a day. He's not in the same city as I am, but to call me and just say, Dad, I just met a girl, or, there's none of that communication between us. None at all. I try, but I'm not skillful. I don't have the skills. It doesn't work. And I just try again.
And Mark, you say you don't have the skills to connect with him, but I'm wondering, maybe this seems off, but it feels like it helps to put it in context for me a little bit. Like you feel like you have the skills to connect with other people. You feel connected to other people in your life?
Probably, I go with measurements, everything in my life, significantly less than the others, less than other people, less than average, less than, quote, normal.
You think that you're less connected to
Correct.
people.
Yes,
So you feel less connected to people than you would like to in general?
Correct. Yeah, maybe I'm just setting the standard too high and making the highest, best connected people as my example. And I'm definitely...
How are you feeling in that regard at this very moment?
I feel like there could have been, if somebody else was in my chair, would have had even a better connection with all other three people in this room.
Would you mind adding that right here?
Okay.
Someone else could have a better connection with Jill and David, or something like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And when you tell yourself that, how about this category of feelings? Do any of those resonate, like the inadequate cluster?
I would say probably inadequate, and that's a good 50.
Mm-hmm.
And what about below that? We have a line that says lonely, unloved, unwanted, rejected, alone, abandoned. Any of those emotions feel true for you?
Of all of those, probably the only one would be lonely, and that is, I have so many loving people around me that it's hard to say, to accept that I feel lonely, but I would say a 40.
Mm-hmm. And are you feeling that at this very instant?
Not really. No,
Okay.
I cannot make it a 40 at this instant.
Yeah.
No.
And then how about any in this cluster, the anxiety cluster?
Yeah. I'm not sure if I call it panicky in that cluster. There's panicky, frightened, worried. Anxious, yes. Just in general, I'm an anxious person to begin with. And regarding this, I also feel some degree of anxiety, maybe a 30.
Okay. Should we go over these two?
Sure.
Yeah. There's a category here: embarrassed, humiliated,
Foolish.
self-conscious. Do you have any?
I would say foolish. I'm not even sure it's exact word or not, but and self-conscious. Probably a 60.
Mm-hmm. How about hopeless, discouraged, thinking about
discouraged, I would say, despite all of my years of effort, and maybe a little bit pessimistic, and a little bit of despairing, but probably discouraged and pessimistic, probably a good 80.
Mm-hmm. And how about frustrated, stuck,
or
defeated?
Yeah. Maybe defeated, just can't get it done. And that's probably also a good 80.
And any other emotions that we haven't touched on, that you're having right now, or that you have when you're thinking about your son and your dream of having this large, loving family? And
no, I cannot think of any other. I'm sure there are plenty of other emotions, but I can't think exactly what.
That's a good list. And then, how much did you believe this third thought you wrote down? Read that again.
Yeah, someone else could have had a better connection with Jill and David here. I'm pretty sure that a lot of other people could have had a better relation, or connection right here. And I'm putting it at 70.
Yeah.
Mark, I was going to ask you, you shared with us feeling like you've made a lot of efforts to reach out to your son or to try to be close to your son. And would you be willing to tell us a little bit about that? Just sort of what I don't even mean what you've tried, but just what that's been like.
Yeah, it's again, for me, it's been a constant feeling or constant thought of failure. That I don't know how to connect. Had I known how to connect, I would have connected very tightly by now, because I'm basically a giving person, and I value relation with my son very highly. And if it's not happening, and every time that I try it doesn't work to any satisfactory degree or any measurably good degree to write home about, I just see it as a failure of not my will, not my wish, but a failure of my mind in that particular department.
Yeah, so it sounds like you feel like you have tried and it's been on your mind for such a long time, and every time it feels like a failure. It feels like you're not as connected as you'd like to be with him.
Correct.
And is he connected with other people? Do you see him being close to other people? Is there a way that you're also comparing yourself to other people he's close to?
You know, that's an excellent question, actually, and I never stop to think about it, even though I know every detail about it. No, he's not well connected to other people at all.
So he doesn't seem to have a lot of close, satisfying relationships himself.
He's a very charming guy. I mean, you see him and you would just want to hug him in about 5 minutes.
Yeah.
But he cannot, it doesn't happen to him to forge deep, meaningful connections with others. Very quickly, people become alienated.
Wow.
I want to come back to kind of how you're feeling right now, sharing this with Jill and David and Fabrice. You're doing a beautiful job of sharing your story and what your thoughts and feelings have been, and how much love you feel for your son, and the tremendous effort that you put in, and might come out later in this session, you know, the tremendous efforts I'm aware that you've made to change the way you communicate, even coming to the Tuesday psychotherapy training group at Stanford, even though you're not a therapist but a physician, and how you've started your own group with friends and pals to learn the 5 secrets of effective communication, and to develop those skills that you think that you're lacking. But I'm wondering, even now, you know, are you feeling as close to us as you would like, and how are you experiencing it as well, Jill? I'm just thinking in terms of, you know, I feel statements, and you know, maybe even moving this session to a little bit of a deeper, more intimate, or more open level, or, you know. I'm just thinking out loud.
Yeah. Something just happened that suddenly I feel more connected to you guys, and that was what I have learned in sessions that I come to your and Jill's and your classes, David, is that you never, unlike routine and conventional psychology, you never instruct your clients on what is a better way of thinking, or how you should really feel.
Yeah, right.
Rather, it comes from the other side of the table. The clients themselves have said, "Oh my God, now I know." And Jill asked a key question that all of a sudden I felt great relief. Maybe I'm looking for excuses to find some relief. She asked, "How is your son's relationship with others?" And that just brought to my mind that, yes, I accept that I don't have great communication skills, connection, feelings, and so forth. But also regarding my son, I'm faced with a huge mountain. This is probably, it's not only me. Yeah. Not too many other people, or basically no one else that I know of, has been able to have a connection with him and sustained deep connection.
So you've been kind of beating up on yourself without looking at the other side of the coin.
I think I still deserve to be beaten up on. But
we'll do that
soon. We'll make sure you get beaten up.
But in this regard, it seems like on one side is my belief in lack of the skills for connection and communication. And on the other side is his side that is just not an easily connectable person, not just for me, but for his own children and even a grandchild that he has at age 40. Or a few mothers and women who have been in his life.
It's interesting what you said, Mark. When I asked you that question, I wasn't trying to rescue you or trying to challenge your negative thinking. I was asking you it actually in my mind because as a way of collecting data, like I was sort of just trying to understand the situation, the context, and to have you share a little bit more about kind of your son. And I was wondering, I was picturing that he had all these close friendships and you were the one that he was, icing out or something like that. And so I'm just also sharing that it wasn't an attempt to get you to see the other side, but really an attempt to understand you better. But it sounds like what happened was that it did quickly. You sort of had a bit of an aha moment, which was to put it into perspective a little bit.
Just a little bit of the problem. It felt like you put a mirror that I could see myself in your mirror.
But it brings up something important, which is, David, I was going to share that with someone like Mark. I'm sitting here feeling actually very close to Mark, and like I said, I kind of get goosebumps as Mark is telling his story. I feel really caring toward you and compassionate, and I have to fight my urge to rescue Mark as a therapist. I want so much to jump in there and say things that I won't say because I don't want to cheat and rob you of your experience of coming to certain conclusions today on your own, right? I hope that David and I can kind of guide you toward some really good cognitive and emotional change. And I have to fight my urge as a therapist not to say, but Mark, X, Y, and Z, as I sit here feeling close and caring toward you.
I feel that way too. I feel very warmly toward you and so grateful for you to come here and share your heart and share your pain and the guilt and shame about your relationship with your son, and I have a lot of admiration and respect for you.
Yeah, I was going to say too that admiration, that as you're beating up on yourself and feeling guilty, there's also part of me that really admires that, as you say, very high standards that you have toward wanting very high quality, very connected relationships. And rather than judging you, I'm sitting here feeling like, wow, what an awesome guy to want not only to be a fantastic physician, but to have a big, loving, connected family, and to want even more connection than you have with me and David and others, right?
Yeah.
It's amazing. Yeah.
I'm also worried that we're moving too fast. We're still in the empathy phase. Nothing happens in empathy.
That's
we
right.
have to get on to paradoxical agenda setting and methods, and here you're almost cured. It's irritating.
I'm not sure. I'm really not sure, David.
We still have more work to do.
Yeah.
Yes.
I have basically accepted that I have defective. Whatever part of the brain is there for connections and communication, it's not working too well. And I don't know if it's something that the background is inhibiting me, or you can open the brain and look at it and say, here, it's missing. See, there's a hole in here.
Well, we'll see if we can find and repair that hole. I remember once you told me a number of months ago in passing when we were walking into the group on a Tuesday that you even thought you had some kind of brain disorder growing up. I can't remember what it was.
You have an amazing memory.
What was it you were thinking?
I guess we were talking about if you can divide the brain into logic and emotion.
Right. Yeah.
The emotion is not the.
Yeah, that's right. But you weren't saying you were autistic, but you had that milder version.
The milder version,
like
some
pervasive developmental disorder. Is that what you mean? Or Asperger's?
Asperger's.
You were saying so. We'll cure Asperger's here on today's podcast.
If Asperger is true, I don't know. People are changing it.
Well, I'm wondering, should we see if it's time to move on to some paradoxical agenda? Have we done well enough on the empathy? Did we want to see if the tears would flow more?
Yeah. Since this is decades-long emotional issue for me, so I have had time to basically come to acceptance. It is not taking the sadness away, but that's, for me, that's what it is.
Well, that was quite a harrowing account, everything that happened to Mark and to his family. He came in with a brief mood survey that did not show very strong negative emotions, but at the same time, what he's talking about is something that most people would have had a really, really hard time with, and in fact he did. But quite a resilient person. So you're done here with the empathy part, and you're going to move on to the agenda setting. You'll start with the paradoxical invitation. But one thing that I wanted to ask our listeners is, this is kind of new for us. We haven't done this before, and we would like to have their comments. Go to the show notes on feelinggood.com, look for the podcast. You'll find that in the menu. And put your comments, put your questions, tell us what you would like to hear more of or less of, whether it was good for you to hear the whole empathy phase in one shot. So we'd like to get some feedback. And again, apology for the less than perfect sound quality. Anything you'd like to add, David?
No, I think it's great. I'm especially grateful to Mark. Usually you don't get a chance to go behind closed doors and see how therapy actually works, and I think this is a fantastic opportunity because it's real. In addition,
I know
what I've been saying in my written podcasts is that I like to try to complete a course of psychotherapy in one session, and when people hear that, they think it's I'm a quack or it's a lie or something like that. And of course, there will be follow-up work for Mark to do after this one session, but we do try to cause pretty dramatic or complete elimination of symptoms in most cases in a single session, and then this gives people a chance to see, is that really possible? Is it a fraud? Is it for real? And if so, what are the implications and how can it be done? What are the methods? And
you're not claiming that this happens all the time.
No, but in my experience, it happens almost all the time. Like when I'm working with somebody, I would say 80-90% of the time I see a complete elimination of symptoms in a single 2-hour session or near complete. Then you got to do relapse prevention training. You got to do a lot of other things, and the person may want to work on other issues. But the idea is to make something real and dramatic happen for the patient. One other thing that I wanted to mention is that when you listen to the empathy phase that you just listened to, it might have seemed kind of slow, but it's extreme high-speed therapy that we're doing because we're trying to compress several years of therapy into a single 2.5 hour
and you had a lot of things to say.
Yeah. So anyway, that's my.
All right. Well, that was a great one again. We'll continue next time with at least the first part of the agenda setting, and
and just to provide a transition there. In empathy, you're just finding out where the person is at, how they're feeling, how they're thinking. In the agenda setting, the paradoxical agenda setting, we're going to find out what, if anything, Mark wants help with. And then we're going to bring what's called resistance, subconscious resistance, to conscious awareness and melt that away before we try to jump in there with methods to try to help him.
Yeah. Great. All right. See you next time. This has been another episode of the Feeling Good podcast. For more information, visit Dr. Burns' website at feelinggood.com, where you will find the show notes for this podcast under the blog page, and where you can leave your comments and questions. The website has an abundance of resources for therapists as well as non-therapists, including books, workshops, a list of online training groups around the world, and much more. Theme music is Gypsy Jazz in Paris, 1935. Composed and performed by Brett Van Donsel. I am your host, Fabrice Nye, and I invite you to join us next time for another episode of the Feeling Good podcast.